Welcome to Live from My Drum Room. Today is a special episode celebrating Hal Blaine's 95th birthday. I had the great honor of knowing Hal for 30 years. He was my dear friend, and he would have turned 95 on February 5th, 2024. I actually attended his 90th birthday party in 2019, a historic event in and of itself at the Baked Potato in Los Angeles. And for most of us, it was the last time we saw Hal. He passed away in March of 2019. So I put together this show to celebrate his 95th birthday, kind of a long overdue episode to celebrate Hal. And you'll see I'm joined by Denny Tedesco, director and producer of course, the Wrecking Crew documentary, and most recently, the Immediate Family documentary. Also the son of legendary Wrecking Crew guitarist Tommy Tedesco, Hal's good friend. Also joining me is Randi, legendary Wrecking Crew keyboard player and also the owner of the Baked Potato in Los Angeles, a legendary club. My former boss and my dear friend Don Lombardi, who is the founder of DW Drums Drum Workshop, and two outstanding drummers and dear friends, Clem Burke from the band Blondie, and Dennis Diken from the Smithereens, also very good friends of Hal. And later we'll be joined by the man himself, Jim Keltner, who I refer to as the Jedi Master. Jim Keltner will also join us a little ways into the show. So I hope you enjoy this. One of my favorite episodes, and I think you're going to love it. We all loved Hal and still love him, and we all miss him like crazy. And he was just one of a kind. And I hope if you never met him or never knew him, that you know him a little bit better and a little bit more after this episode. So thanks for watching. Buckle your seatbelts. It's going to be a lot of fun. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll see you on the other side. So please welcome to this special episode celebrating Hal Blaine's 95th birthday, Denny Tedesco, Clem Burke, Don Lombardi. But wait, there's more. Randi. Welcome, my friends. Thanks for being here today. We'll get the show started. Here comes Dennis Diken. All right.
Hi.
All right. And I want to just mention that a couple of people that originally were going to be here aren't able to be here today. And that is Ingrid Fashing, who runs the Hal Blaine Facebook page. 21,000 members and still growing. It's a great Facebook page. And she does a great job. She's unable to make it today. She was a little under the weather, but hopefully she's watching. And our dear friend Danny Serafin had originally said he'd be here today, but realized he had another appointment booked already and had to pass or back out at the last second. But Danny did ask me to read this, which I will do right now. I asked Danny just to give me a quick little comment about Hal, and he said, Hal had a massive influence on my playing, and later, after getting to know him, my life. He was a good friend, always willing to share his wisdom with me. He's greatly missed by all of us. P.S. If you listen to my drum part on the Chicago song Beginnings, it's basically a tribute to Hal Blaine, which is so great. I never put that together, but when I thought about it, it's absolutely a tribute to Hal, playing the concert toms and those big roundhouse fills. So anyway.
I can hear that. Yeah, I can hear that.
Mm.
So Danny's here in spirit, and hopefully with any luck, Jim Keltner will join us as well. It'd be great to get some Jim Keltner stories. But I'm going to jump in. Looking at my screen, Danny, you're kind of the first face I see. Maybe you can share some stories or a story about. No, it's a good face. No, I mean, you have a history with Hal because your dad, of course, the legendary Tommy Tedesco, member of the Wrecking Crew, Hal's best friend. I know you have 10,000 stories. Also the producer and director of the fabulous Wrecking Crew documentary. But maybe share a story.
You know what? I didn't know Hal. I mean, I knew Hal as a kid, but mostly by his name. I mean, saw him occasionally at a dinner party or something like that with his wife Lydia at the time. But Dad, I knew these guys as soon as I did the documentary. That's when I really got to know Don and Hal and all these guys. because Dad didn't mix home with too much with work. So it's funny because I think Don and I talked about this. I think Don, Randy, and I have hung out longer and been closer than he was with my dad. Is that right, Don?
Okay, for me, doing that and talking about your father, who happens to be probably one of the greatest musicians of all time, you know, and to be able to sit next to him many times and just go through that, and then you turn to the left and there's Hal Blaine. I was like a pig in slop, as they say. You know, it was an amazing time. I didn't know anything about recording or doing any of that stuff. For me, it was a brand new. These guys had some experience, and to be surrounded by them was amazing. And Hal was always very helpful to everyone. You know, to new drummers, somebody that wanted to know about it, he would take them under his wing or bring them in and be very helpful. He never was anti, another drummer, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know what Dad always said, which was really interesting about Hal was, he goes, Hal could be, he would give this 110% if it was a Spectre date or it was a bar mitzvah. It didn't matter. It was a gig that he just like, it wasn't, he never came in half-ass.
That's true.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
true. Very
It,
true.
and I think it seems, just from everything from knowing Hal and I've learned Denny through the documentary and knowing Don, it seemed like all you guys, all the members of the Wrecking Crew took every date, regardless of, like you say, what it was, whether it was a Frank Sinatra date or a pop band of the week of the month date. It was just as important and just as serious to do the best job they could.
The first time I met Hal was on a record date for Phil Spector. He's a Rebel with the Crystals, and then we didn't see each other for a couple of months. And I had a gig at a place called the Saharan in Chicago, and I'm walking down the hallway to go to my gig, and here's Hal Blaine walking right at me, and we're looking, and he says, "Don," I say, "Hal." And we hadn't seen each other and we've been friends. We were friends ever since that day. He was there with Patty Page in the main room, and we were in the lounge with my trio.
Wow.
Wow.
It was kind of neat.
What year was that, Don? If you could take a guess.
1962.
Wow, man. So 60 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. And in those days, the very first date, the guitar players were Barney Kessel, Tommy Tedesco, Howard Roberts, and then a guy by the name of Russ Titleman, who was also playing rhythm guitar, who later became a very famous producer.
Yeah.
And Russ was kind of the gopher for everybody. And Hal Blaine, of course, was the drummer, and he always had two bass players. Jimmy Bond would be one, and then whoever he would have on Fender, sometimes Ray Pullman, sometimes Lyle Ritz, a whole bunch of different characters,
Not Carol? Wasn't around yet?
Not Carol. Carol
Then.
didn't do the Phil Spectors on bass.
She played guitar.
Oh. She played guitar on the Spectre stuff.
She did a couple of good dates that she played guitar on, but I don't think I can remember her playing bass on anything.
Oh, wow.
For Phil. No, not really. Well, I could be wrong.
I think I heard Pet Sounds when you did Pet Sounds.
Oh, she was around then. Yeah, that was
That's
different.
later.
That was
Later. Yeah.
That was Brian.
Yeah.
But that was Hal.
Right.
Wow.
Hal, you know what Hal did as a drummer that I noticed? He would listen to this song, and then out would come the tuning key, and he started tuning his drums to be sympathetic with the key that the singer was going to be singing or where it was. He always would retune on, I don't care who the date was. If he heard something immediately that came out, and he would tune the drums to be sympathetic to the track. Now, most other drummers just came in and played,
Yeah.
Most of the time they don't stop to tune, but he did constantly.
Did he tune to so he would tune to maybe the key of the song or
I think yeah, whatever would, I guess that's what I would guess. It was the key of
Just
the
in
song.
sympathy to the way the song sounded. And
Wow.
Of course,
Yeah.
but you got to remember, Hal could sing. When he sang, he sang like Frank Sinatra. I mean, he had a real crooning voice, and he loved to
wow.
sing. He loved to sing.
He never did any recording singing, did he? I mean, he did
No,
solo records with
no.
drums, but not singing though.
No, one of my favorite stories is when we were on tour with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and Nancy Sinatra for Hubert Humphrey when he was running for president. When they all were still Democrats. And
Yeah, I was going to say a good Democrat. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were in Minneapolis, Minnesota on a Sunday where they have a blue law. There's no booze, no food, everything closes down. And we did an early morning concert for a fundraiser for Hugh Humphrey. And we got back and we were starving. So Hal says, call down. I said, Hal, every place is closed in the hotel. He says, well, I saw somebody walking in when we were coming out. I said, everybody's going to the White House to get hamburgers. And he said, no.
Like White Castle?
Tell him it's from Frank Sinatra. I said, I can't do that. We were staying in the same room, so I pick up the phone. He talks me into it. And I call down, and somebody answers. And I said, oh, shit, now I'm really stuck. I said, okay, I'm calling for Mr. Sinatra, and we're in room 117, whatever it was. And I said, we want to order. He said, well, we're closed. I said, are you sure we can't get just a little something? And he said, just a second, my boss is coming. And then the head guy of the restaurant comes, and he says, sure, for Mr. Sinatra, we can do it, right? So we order a couple of steaks and baked potatoes, and within a half hour here, there's a knock on the door. And I look at Hal, I said, what do we do now? Hal goes in the bathroom and turns the shower on. And he starts singing, come fly with me, fly up to it. And I open the door, the shower is on, the guy's looking around, where's Mr. Sinatra? And he can hear Hal singing in the shower, and he leaves the stuff. And he goes out, I sign for it, he goes out the door, and Hal comes out, and he says, where's the rolls? I said, what do you mean? He said, they forgot to bring the rolls. I said, I'm not calling back. He talks me into calling back. The guy went and got rolls. He comes back and knocks on the door again. Hal goes back in the shower. He starts singing again. Come fly with me. I said, this is impossible. And the guy leaves it and goes away. And he pulled it off. So when we got back, Hal said, we got to leave our trays outside the door. So we both left our trays so that when everybody came back from the White House, they're going to wonder, how did those guys eat? And we didn't get food here. Anyway, that's Hal Blaine,
Oh my God.
I do have a record that Hal sings on.
Oh, wow.
It's from the early 70s. And he did a Christmas record called Alfie the Christmas Tree. And it wasn't under his name. It was called The Frogs. And it was on Mum's label. And he did his own voice, singing kind of low. And then he did like a Chipmunk's Varispeed on his voice.
Yes.
So it's not like really straight singing, but he is the singer on the record. So it's a bit of a curio at best, but
Gotta hear that.
Oh,
Is he credited as Hal on the record, or you had to research that to find out it was Hal's?
it's under the name
scenes.
of Frogs.
Right.
Frogs.
Okay.
But it's clearly Hal. I think he's got the maybe production and writer credit on it too.
Okay.
Yeah, but he speaks a little bit on it too. It's like a children's record kind of thing. But yeah, so maybe that's the only thing he sang on. Well, you know what? He did sing a little bit, I think. Oh, he did on a Gary Lewis record. It was a promotional thing for, I think, Cornflakes. And it was called Do the Flake. And he's singing on that, flake, flake, do the flake, flake, flake. And there was one other record where he did like an incidental vocal part. So there is audio evidence of him warbling out there, which is pretty cool.
He had such a great natural baritone voice, you know.
Did.
You
Yeah.
could, you,
Well, hey,
you
John,
could,
can I get this out of the way now? I don't know if you remember this, but years ago when you were still at Zildjian, I guess it's sometime probably in the early mid 90s. I was at the time I did it better. I did a little imitation of Hal.
I
Okay.
remember. Yes.
And I called John and got his voicemail at Zildjian. Hey, John, it's Hal calling. No big deal. Just checking in. Want to see how you're doing. You don't have to call back, but you bought it.
I did buy it. It was perfect, man. It was perfect. I absolutely was, and you still got it, Dennis. I mean, but that you had it down, because every time after that, when I'd see you, I'd say, Dennis, we'll get to how you're doing in a minute, but you got to give me a Hal Blaine, you know.
Well, I think you told me you actually did call him back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about, John. I didn't call you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm fine, John. I'm fine.
When did you first meet Hal, Dennis?
It was a great moment for me. I wrote him a fan letter in 1982.
Okay.
And just somebody got me his address, and I just wanted to make contact with him because his playing meant so much to me as it does to everybody here. And within a week, there was a reply from Hal. It blew my mind. He got right back to me, gave me his phone number, and we started corresponding and
Oh, wow.
chatting on the phone. And then finally, he was coming to New York in 1985. He was doing a tour with David Grisman, the bluegrass mandolinist. And, well, Dan, I'm coming to New York, so finally get to meet you. Oh, great, Hal. You're touring with Grisman, huh? I says, yep, playing Boston, blah, 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 D.C. So what drums are you using for the tour? He says, oh, we're just renting gear. Hey, Hal, you want to use my kit? He says, oh, I wouldn't want to impose. No, it's okay. So they played the bottom line, and he used my drums. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Wow, man.
I was his valet for the day. I drove him to his hotel, and we hung out, and we had already bonded quite a bit from corresponding. He was such a giving guy, even to just people who would drop him a line. He just would spend time. I have so many. I still have all the correspondence in the pre-email days. If he just wanted to, I'm sure some of you guys have this too. He would just drop a postcard, a little beat from Hal Blaine is said on it. And it's just saying, oh, like, I saw you on the Tonight Show last night. Great. You guys were great. Or well, I'm still looking for that album you asked about. I'll get back to you. He was always stay in touch and always be encouraging. And,
that's amazing.
And we stayed friends, and you all know what it was like. He's just a life. Once you were friends with Hal, you had a true friend for life.
That's absolutely true. He was serious about staying in touch with people.
Very much.
He was a people lover. He was a good guy. He was one of the better guys. Yeah. If he could help you out, he would. I wouldn't want to be on the bad side of it because, as you well know, him and Carol did not get along, and he could take it out pretty good too, But sometimes justified. Some Denny Tedesco and I, when they would be showing the Wrecking Crew film, here's an interesting story. Hal and I would be there for the Q&A most of the time when we can to be there together. And we were doing a show in Palm Springs at some golf course, I think it was. I can't remember exactly. Denny might be able to fill that in. But we had a plan. The plan was when the Wrecking Crew film would come on, before Carol started speaking, my job was to take Hal out of the movie completely and say, Hal, I'm hungry. Let's get the hell out of here. Let's grab something. We grab something to eat and then come back. So he wouldn't be there for Carol's part, because when it would come on, he would say the loudest, rudest things to the screen. And the audience would hear him, and it got to be a little annoying. To me, it was funny, but to no one else it was. So we'd have to get him out of the room. And I'd say, come on, we'll go across the street. There's a place, we'll grab a burger or something. And I'd make sure it took at least a half hour so that we could get back in time for the rest of the film and then do the Q&A. Pretty
That's
funny.
great.
What was
great.
the origin of that feud? Do you know any?
Yeah.
Was it from day one?
Yeah, I don't know if it was from day one because they had to work together many times, so I don't think it was from day one. I think there was always a rub because Carol was a bit of a yenta on dates and she would talk, and that would annoy us because we were trying to get out of one place so that we can get to the next place on time. And a lot of times she would stretch it, But
to get to the next session.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what would happen, I think she played on so much stuff that she forgets. And a number of times she said she played on things that she didn't really play on. And that was a big rub to Hal. And they just didn't get along. They just never got along. And it went on for years, I guess, Carol went her way and Hal went the other way. But that's life.
Right.
Yeah.
She moved right near where he moved out to a place, and she ended up moving a block away, and that really pissed him off. He couldn't handle that too well.
Hey, look who's joined us, gentlemen. None other than Jim Keltner.
Hey, Jim.
All right.
Hey,
Jim.
Great to see you, Jim. Whoop.
Oh,
Well,
came and he went.
he came, he saw, he conquered. He'll be
By the
back.
way, I got a note from Michael Kravitz, which is Hal's nephew.
oh, right.
And-
He was at the induction there
Yeah.
in Palm Springs, right?
Yeah, he was
Yes,
the one that
yeah.
put that together.
Yeah.
And he said he sang "Flat, Broke, and Lonesome," the country tune. It was a demo with Don Randi. Remember that, Don?
That's right. I do remember that.
Oh, too funny. Well, before Jim Keltner comes back, and I know he will, I'd love to hear what my old boss, young former boss, Don Lombardi, maybe could share a story about Hal. I don't know. I think you guys go back a ways, but I know he became a DW artist in the last years of his life too.
Actually, there's Jim coming back. Actually, I can tell you a story that relates to the interview I did with Jim that he will remember. Hi, Jim. It's Don. We'll all say hi. We actually can see you now. We did an interview, interviewed Charlie Watts at one point, and when it was over, we got talking. And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to have Hal Blaine out and want to do an interview with him." And Charlie said, "Would love to be a part of that if I could." And of course, I said, "Well, absolutely." So we did the round table with Jim, Charlie, and at the end of it, we were in my office, and Charlie turned to me and said, "Don, could you get a drum head and a black Sharpie?" And I thought, well, that's nice. He wants to sign something for me. This will be really cool. So I go out and I get a drum head and a black Sharpie. I come in, I hand it to Charlie. He turns to Hal and says, "Hal, could I get your signature, please?"
I love it. Oh,
You've arrived at that point. Jim was in the room standing with me at the same time. He'll remember that. Great times and a lot of stories. I mean, he went on in those interviews and told some amazing stories about basically inventing drum techs back in the day and all the things he had to go through with the unions. And you remember those stories, Don, for sure. I asked him once, I said, when you go to all these different sessions, multiple ones, day after day and in a variety of different genres, what's the first thing that you want to find out when you get down and sit down? From a drummer's perspective, I figured he was going to talk about, I want to know the genre, the tempo, the vibe, and it wasn't. It was simply, I want to know about the story. I want to know about the lyrics. And that was a life-changing, I think, lesson for a lot of drummers. I play that over and over anytime I sit down with anybody and have them want to study. He really understood the musicality of what it takes. And speaking of Mr. Musicality, there is Jim. There's a great picture. There's the picture. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
that was behind the baked potato. I'm sure Don Randi recognizes that backdrop there. That was
Yes, I do.
at Hal's 90th birthday party. After when Charlie and Jim were making their exit. That's one of my absolute favorite photos of all time right there. Look at that. My two heroes.
Yep.
Well,
how wonderful that was, it, when how important all the drummers were paying homage to Hal Blaine, and I never quite understood that, until that birthday party when I saw it was not only out of friendship, it was out of respect too.
Oh, absolutely.
You see a guy
Yeah.
like Clem Burke coming up and playing it, and Danny Carey being there,
Yeah.
and Chad Smith, all these guys from famous bands, and then Jim Keltner walks in with Sir Charles. Pretty
Yeah.
amazing,
It
pretty
was.
Do you
wonderful.
remember when that night went down, the planning of it, which Michael and Michael Kravitz was doing? There was moments where it was like, how Hal could get testy, and we go, oh God, is he even going to show up, because he was, wasn't well, and this and that, and we had this big thing planned for him, and it was like, just all he needs to do is just be there just for the first set, you know what I mean? Just so, and then that'll be it, and he could go home. He closed the place. Everybody was gone. He just, until the last person was in the,
That's right.
he signed everybody's autograph till the end. I mean, I
Yeah.
left before he was finished. I think you did too, Don. I think we all
Yes.
left at that point. He was still signing
I think
and
Justin was.
played.
Yes, that's
He
right.
played those 2 songs.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. But that was Hal. He took the time to be a people person, and he wanted to do that. He didn't do it because he had to. It was his ability to handle the situation too. And there were times you can imagine you want to get the hell out of there, but he would always take that time,
Yeah.
spend it with people. Good folks, good man.
Don, you mentioned, the guys like Danny Carey and Chad Smith, being there that night and paying their respects, because, they were fans of Hal's. And I can tell you all the years, and Clem knows about this, and Dennis, I don't know if you ever made it to any of the NAMM shows that Zildjian had the big autograph sessions, but Clem was certainly part of those. And it's funny, we'd have these younger drummers like Travis Barker or Trey Cool or somebody who are certainly famous, great drummers, well known, but they'd all see Hal there, and even those guys knew who he was, and I remember a couple of times some of those guys saying, "Can you sit me next to Hal? I'd love to talk to him just for a minute." And there was so much respect. I mean, he transcended all these generations, I think, is what, and all thanks, I think, largely to the book. I think the book really helped kind of make people aware of exactly how important he was. All those recordings you guys did in the Wrecking Crew, and then years later when Denny did the documentary, of course, that just kind of really, I think, made him like a household name. I think along the lines of like a Buddy Rich, like that, well known.
I think you're right. And I think what speaks to all generations of drummers and musicians and just music fans, what the essence of those records, certainly stemming from Hal's playing, but all the guys in the Wrecking Crew, and certainly Don's playing too, but Hal had so much humanity in expressed in his playing. I think that's what speaks to the world and draws people to want to know who created the feels of those records. There's something almost intangible that he expressed from his heart and from his soul in every session he did. And I really think that's what will keep that music living for centuries, just because
And you know what?
It's
It's also
special that emanated from his heart and soul.
it's everything you said, and it's also he had a wonderful sense of humor. There he is. There's Jim. How you doing, my friend?
So I'm sorry that I came late, man. But I love what you guys are saying about Hal.
Yeah, well,
When was the first time you met him, Jim?
yeah, that's what I was going to
I
ask.
met him at the session with Gary Lewis.
Okay.
And I knew nothing about any Hal Blaine or Gary Lewis or Leon Russell or anything. Well, I knew Gary because he came into the music store where I was working in Pasadena. He was studying acting at the Pasadena Playhouse, and when he came in, I've told this story many times, and he wanted me to be his drummer, and finally, he coerced me with $250 a week compared to my 80. Anyway, but I was happy playing with Don. I was playing with the freaking Don Randi, man, and I had made it as far as I'm concerned. I'm playing on the Strip, playing jazz on the Strip, Sunset Strip, and it was fantastic. So it took me. It was a bit of a thing, for me to join Gary. So the first thing we did was go into the studio, and Hal was there, and I had known about Hal, and they told me that he was there to play tambourine and some percussion things, and but later I found out he was there because they didn't know if I'd be able to cut it. I mean, if you can't play properly on a record, time is money. They've got to have somebody there that can. And anyway, that day, it was the first day that I realized, like somebody, Dennis, I think, was just talking about his humanity. Hal was like, he turned into my uncle. He turned into, I could just ask him anything, and he made fun of stuff. He joked around. He was like my dad. And I felt so comfortable. It was ridiculous. And then a couple of times there was, and of all things, you'll appreciate this as drummers. You're playing music, Gary Lewis type of rock and roll, Gary Lewis Playboy's rock and roll stuff. And why we had charts. And so I'm looking at my chart, and I'm, fortunately I could read, but I didn't know exactly, like, I remember looking at this figure, and I said, how would you play this? So I could never have asked any of the really hip guys, the guys that, that were really cool and everything, because I would have felt really stupid asking them. But Hal allowed me to ask him anything. I just had that feeling I could ask him anything. I said, how would you play this? I didn't want to say, how do I play this? Because I knew I could play it, but what sounds, what would I lead with? Where would I end up? And he just sat down behind the drum. He said, I play it like this. And boom, bash. And I just said, oh. And I remember thinking, what a revelation that is. I would never have done that. I mean, I would never have instinctively done that. I would have thought, okay, that's going to be too loud to end with a crash cymbal. Because I think somebody earlier in the session had told me, don't play too many cymbals. So, and they were right about that. That's kind of one of the first things you learn in recording, is you go easy on the cymbals. And you pick out the right kind of cymbals and stuff. And Hal's cymbals were unbelievably beautiful. Thin old A's.
Yeah.
And later on, when I got with Paiste, I tried to copy that. And fortunately, they're so fantastic. They made cymbals very, very similar to that. But that was the day that I first met Hal, and he was just absolutely like a combination of a drum teacher for me, like the guy that, he wrote the book, and it was just, it started a relationship that I really felt, it was like one of the first real relationships I had in the music business that made me feel like I was one of them. And I think that's probably hard to get that feeling, for a lot of people when they first come in.
Mm-hmm.
But he embraced me in such a way you know, and I must say, while we're on the subject, Ringo did the same thing to me.
Hmm.
And we just had a conversation about that recently. You know, it's really important how when you come into a situation like that, like both of these, you know, I'm here with the Hal thing, with the Gary Lewis thing. I didn't realize it was like Gary Lewis had a big hit record with Hal Blaine playing on it, right? This Diamond Ring.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big record, and so, you know, a lot was on the line for his next record, and I didn't realize any of that. And it could have been it could have been disastrous, or it could have been sort of mediocre, or it could have been anything but what it turned out to be. It turned out to be fantastic. Leon was producing, and he leaned over to me during a playback and he said, "You're going to be a great rock drummer." And I'm a jazz drummer, and I didn't want to be a great rock drummer, but I knew the impact. I felt the impact of him saying that. And then Hal had those same kind of words for me. He would encourage me. He made me feel like I was gonna be good, and I would know how to do this kind of thing. Anyway, so I'm sorry to be taking up all the time here,
No,
but
Jim,
that's what Hal Blaine. I can't say enough about Hal Blaine, man. And I have in every interview I've ever done. Hal was not only a mentor, he was like, honest to God, like a surrogate father. He was like a big brother. And most of all, he was the cat that just, when you got to see him play, and there's another perk. You know, imagine sitting behind Hal Blaine while he's playing with these freaking Wrecking Crew guys. It was more than a lesson that you could imagine. I mean, I just remember the power. He used tiny little sticks. I don't know if everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, he used little sticks, but he was a big guy, and he had big hands, big old hairy forearms. And I guess he didn't need to use big sticks. So he got this tremendous, powerful sound with these little sticks. And but more than that, he had like he had a leader quality. You know, Don would know this more than, you know, anybody. Don, you were there at all those sessions. You know, it felt like he was kind of the leader. That's what I felt like.
You know, you're absolutely right. And he made it easier for you to play for everybody else. And I remember the date when you were sitting behind him. I'll never forget that. And just saying, only Hal would do that. But you know, Earl was like that too. Earl Palmer would do stuff like that too. But
Yeah.
Hal was so special when it came. Hal had that wonderful sense of humor that made you relax.
Right.
You felt like you knew him for 100 years, you know, right away. And
I mean,
he admired you. He always spoke highly of you. You know, he was good. He was a good man, good guy.
yeah, I know, man. You know, he later on in life, you realize that sense of humor that he brought to the studio was so important, man. There was huge money on the line for this. You guys were playing on the biggest records of the day, and that's some big important shit to be doing, and you had to be able to relax and do your best, you know. And like you just said, Hal was a big part of that, and allowing everybody to laugh. You know, I just remember he would say the funniest stuff.
Yeah.
And later on, I would try to do it, and it didn't work.
We were doing a date at Gold Star one time for Phil Spector. I forget. I think it was the Ronettes. I'm not sure. But after we were there about 2 hours, there's a phone ringing in the studio. And we stopped, and Phil says, "What's that ringing?" I had. nobody knows. We do another couple hours. Phil is on one tune for 10 hours. So we do another couple hours, and the phone is ringing again, and he hears it. And Phil says, "What the hell is going on in there? Somebody's got a phone." No. About 2 more hours go by, and the phone is ringing. But this time he lets it ring and ring. And Phil is going crazy. He says, "What the fuck is going on?" And Hal opens up his case, and he takes out the phone. "Hello? Oh, Phil, it's for you." He had gotten one of those prop phones from one of the studio gigs he was doing, and he had one of those prop phones in his case. In the middle of $1 million date, right? That's Hal Blaine.
That's right.
Oh my God. Oh
Yeah.
Jim, did he and over the years he referred a lot of work to you, didn't he? As you were starting out and Hal was already pretty well established, there was all that work.
Well, I think no, what he did was he got me, he threw me, I always say that he threw me in the deep end. Because I didn't have cartage. I didn't know what cartage, I didn't know anything. And but he told somebody to call me. It was a Jimmy Webb commercial. Jimmy Webb was doing this commercial for Goodyear tires, and I didn't know any of that either. I didn't know who Jimmy Webb was. I didn't, they didn't tell me it was a Goodyear tire. They didn't tell me anything. It was just a date, and it was a TT&G. And any of y'all who know TT&G, you know that it's an elevator up to the room. And here I am walking from my Volkswagen that's got all my drums in the cases, and I'm bringing everything up in the elevator, and I walk in this room, this big room. TT&G is a big room up there, right? And I walk in this room, and I see a whole orchestra. I see string players, horns, rhythm section. Everybody's there. And the drum place where the drums are supposed to be is a big hole. There's no drums there because I'm late. So I'm late to a very important date, an extremely important date. I mean, this is Jimmy Webb, man, and I remember he was so sweet, though. He was really nice to me. And I really appreciated that because I was sweating, and I remember this distinctly, and all the musicians I've ever told this story to laugh so hard. I remember distinctly the look that the string players gave me as I walked. Who in the fuck is this late hippie? Dude, my hair was really long, and I don't know. And I'm carrying my drums in, and I'm setting them up one by one, and you just only have to imagine the humiliation, that I was feeling.
That's a great story, though. That's wonderful.
Well, yeah, but the person that actually saved me that day was Mike Dacey. Anybody remember Mike Dacey?
Oh yeah, very well. Yeah.
Mike Dacey, out of all the people in that room, like the string players were all they were God bless them, they were there working. That's all they knew how to do. They just show up at the session and work, and they don't know from some idiot coming in late to play drums. Where's Hal Blaine? They're probably thinking, what the hell? Anyway, so but all the rest of the guys were all like normal looking, dressed nice, and at the session and everything. Mike Dacey was dressed in buckskin. Fringe, like long fringe in the buckskin from his arms and his shoulders and everything. It was like this beautiful thing, but it looked like what is he? It looked like he was like an actor on a set somewhere or something. And I think maybe he had a red bandana or something. It was crazy. But he felt me. He didn't know me, I don't think, but he was making Joe. He was doing a Hal Blaine. He was trying to divert. He was saying stuff that was funny and everything. And then when we started playing, I remember looking at the chart, and I remember thinking, okay, well, this is just, this is nothing. This is a typical drum chart with nothing on it, except that bars and a couple of little figures. And so I thought, okay, I'm good. And so the first rundown felt really good, man. It felt great. These cats, when you're doing a record date with those kind of people, they're the best musicians in the world, really, when you think about it. And so you can't go wrong if all you got to do is just try to hang in there and do your best. So I sounded good. Everybody was happy. Jimmy Webb was talking about this and that. We got the take real quick, or several takes, as a commercial. And then Mike Dacey says, he yells out, he says, let's do a version. Oh no, Jimmy Webb said we got to do a different kind of little version now of the same thing. And so Mike Dacey stood up and said, let's do a 5/4 version. And so I froze. I went, oh my God. Okay, so but then I tried to compose myself, and we started and we played it in 5, and it was fantastic because 5 is very natural in a way. And so you just, everything worked out beautifully. And I remember thinking, and then Dacey gave me the okay sign, like, hey man, that was good at the end of it. And I remember thinking, oh my God. I just remember thinking, I remember saying, thank you, Lord. Those were the days, by the way. And I don't want to get religious on you guys or political, either one, right? But having said that, those were the days for me when I realized that every time I sat down to play, I would pray before I would play. I did that then, and I do that today.
Great.
And it worked.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jimmy Webb had the same experience, but the opposite with Hal. Jimmy Webb and I think Don and my dad, they might have been doing a Motown Christmas thing when Jimmy was just starting out, and it was Jimmy's music, whatever it was, and he was the leader. And he walked in, and he was really nervous. And he said at the end, Hal gave him the okay sign. He said, "You're going to do well, kid." He said it changed everything in his life. And that was the beginning of Jimmy.
Well, I'm telling you, man, it's so important. It is so very important to have somebody like that in your life, man. I was so blessed to have a Hal Blaine in my life. My God, and look at that with Tommy. They made history, those guys.
Yeah, I know. Look at that.
They made big time history. They showed everybody how to do it.
Yeah. Hey, Denny.
Would you buy a used car from any of those guys?
No way.
Yeah,
They
that's
told me
another
to.
story.
Denny, I know you've told this story 1,000 times, and I asked you to do it once before on my podcast, but there's a great story of the guys doing a film date, or was it at Disneyland or something?
Oh no, it was you talking about the Disney date where they
Disney
were playing?
date. Yeah. And maybe Don was even there too. Maybe Don Randi was there. I don't know, but
I wasn't, but I know the story.
yeah.
So basically, it was the guys are at this point. That's the difference between record guys. It's always been the case. There's the record guys and the TV guys and the film guys. You guys kind of cross over sometimes. And at the time, the Don and these guys were the hot record guys, and they get called in to do a rock and roll part in a Disney movie. And
Right.
the guy's name was Bob Bruner, I think. Bob Bruner, a very straight-laced contractor conductor, and they send all the what do you call it, all the string players and all the legit players away for lunch, and they're going to do the rock and roll part of the session. And so the guy says, okay, we're going to play this really, really slow, guys. And as if these guys had to learn the parts, and the girl accidentally hits the click track, and it's, the regular speed, so it's not half speed or whatever, and it goes boom, 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 and Hal comes in, everything goes, gets all the way across, they nail it, this and that, and that's it. And the guy goes, "Oh my God," he goes, "how did you guys do that?" And my father turned, he goes, "Well, we practice a lot during the day." So
That's great.
I mean,
That's so good.
if they could, those
Yeah,
guys were
I
just constantly busting each other's balls.
Yeah.
If I could be if you could be the fly in the room and record it, all the busting, that would have been hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. I just love that story, man. It's just like, hey, well, Don Lombardi. I know we had started talking as Jim Keltner arrived about, and you are muted, Don Lombardi, by the way. But I was going to ask you about, just to kind of shift gears for a second, about you made a special Hal Blaine commemorative snare drum at a point.
Yeah, honoring
drum
the
workshop?
too. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was one of our commemorative annual snare drums that we did, and Hal came out. We did a nice presentation for him, and I remember after the first time I saw him, we probably all had the stamps all over our walls and all over different places when he would leave. He had his
Hal Blaine Strikes
Yeah.
Again thing. Yeah.
Hal Blaine Strikes Again.
stamp. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was always
Yeah.
every place. And I wanted to mention too, because I know, having all the drummers today know where it came from, and those guys know where it came from, is so important. But he was so well respected, as Jim said, back in the day with his peers. We interviewed Frank DeVito, the late Frank DeVito. We lost another great drummer recently here.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Frank said, in the day they would, if Hal had a black car, he'd get a black car. If he had a certain house, we'd get it. We wanted to be just like him no matter what. So it was, everybody knew back in the day he was doing something that was really special that they were shooting for.
That's
Wow.
right.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, he was, and as I think it was Don Randi, or maybe it was Jim Keltner that said, I mean, when you got to know him, you could see that he had that quality about him where he would be a leader. He was like a natural born leader, where he would just, not in any sort of controlling way either, right, Don? I mean, he would just be a guy that would just kind of say, let's.
I
guys.
have let's see, am I muted?
No, you were okay. Oh, you're muted now, Don. There we go.
We were playing in Las Vegas with the Nancy Sinatra show, and Billy Strange was the conductor. Billy Strange never had that band. That band was Hal Blaine's band, and unfortunately for the rest of the org, Billy would forget the count. He'd count it off 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and Hal would put it boom, 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 right where it was supposed to be. But you got to remember, there was a whole orchestra, and if you learn, you follow the leader, right or wrong. That's where he counted. Hal Blaine said, "No fucking way." He'd count it off, and Hal Blaine would put it where it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, after some of the shows, I get approached. What's going on? We can never start together. We can never. I said, it's not my job, and I would walk away. But that's the way it was. Al knew where I had to go.
Yeah.
And what was it? I forget. One time, Billy and him got into it, and Al said, "Be careful, I'll follow you."
Yeah.
Great line.
I remember him somehow. I got to hear him play with H.B. Barnum Band, right?
Oh, yeah.
Did you do that, Don? Were you?
Yes, I did. Many of those. Yeah.
Well, you were probably on that date, but I'll never forget that, man. It was it was a big band, right?
Oh yeah.
Or at least a big, extra big rhythm section or something. But it was like a Bo Diddley beat but not the New Orleans Bo Diddley. It was some odd kind of thing. It just, to this day, it's one of my favorite kind of things. And occasionally I'll be able to play something similar to it. But otherwise, I'll never forget, man, how funky it was, the power.
Yeah. And you know something, and HB loved the way Hal played. He loved the way Earl played, but I think HB preferred Hal on certain things, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
The energy level, perhaps, you know.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, Earl to me was more of a jazz player. I remember being at PCC, Pasadena City College, and an assembly during the afternoon one time. Earl came. He played with, and to this day I cannot remember the girl singer, but she was a kind of a famous jazz girl at the time. Maybe you know. Early.
I don't know who it could be. It could be.
Well,
There was.
anyway, he was. You know, she was like a real jazz singer, and I don't remember who the bass player was, but it was just a trio backing her, and it was killing. Earl was fantastic. I remember that. I remember thinking Earl sounded like Shelley.
Yeah, that's interesting.
They had that same kind of feel and sound, same kind of sound. They got the same kind of sound out of the drums. That affected me really big time those days, man. The sound that they got, like the sound of Hal's cymbals and his snare. The drummers in those days did not hit the middle part, the fat part of the stick in a rim shot. You know, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they didn't come down like that. You know, that's not the way the backbeat was played in those days. And that's where I come from. And so when I had to start doing that, you know, I did it, and that's the way I play now, unfortunately. But the real way was the way those guys played it, man. If you got a chance to see Hal and Earl play in rhythm sections, playing rock and roll and stuff, pop music, that's the way it should be. I mean, I promised myself that I was not going to try to be. I'm going to try not to be one of these old guys that say, back in the day, it was better. You know, so I'm trying not to say that, really. Although most drummers, and especially drummers, nobody's my age, you know, but drummers, you know, underneath me, like 10, 15 years younger, so they will know what I'm talking about. The best sound from the drums is from using your wrists, you know, and that's the way I came up. That's the way I saw the guy. I saw Philly Joe Jones play, man. I saw Elvin play, and these were guys that played firm, hard, but beautiful. They played from the wrist. There, I said it. Now I'm an old guy talking about it.
Now, Jim, you're the Jedi Master. You are the Jedi Master of the drums.
Well, I got to say, since we're talking about, excuse me, about Earl as well, one of the most memorable days of my life was going out to pick up Earl at his house out in not in Palm Desert, on the way to Palm Desert. I remember Hal was living in Palm Desert or in Palm Springs, but the British drummer Steve White, quite well-known drummer.
Yeah.
Actually, if you check out some of his stuff on YouTube, he's a great drummer. He and I, along with Louise, who I know Jim knows, Louise King, and she put a little trip together where Steve and I went out to Earl's. We picked up Earl. Then we traveled to Palm Springs, where we met Hal at his favorite deli, Manhattan in the Desert.
Yeah.
And so to get Earl and Hal together and just sit there and listen to the two of them, you know, it was such an amazing day and so memorable. I know Jim and I had with Chad, I think one time we had dinner with Earl somewhere as well. But just Earl is just, you know, I was really kind of friendly with Earl the last 10 years of his life as well. And I just wanted to say, one time I was at Chadney's watching Earl. Remember Jim and Chadney's? Earl would play on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I actually got to commiserate with Charlie Watts about this, but I'm sitting there at a table watching Earl play. All of a sudden, who walks in? Jim and Charlie Watts together. And then not only did they sit, not that they sit in the looking out, of course, you know, as a drummer, you want to watch from the back, as Jim was saying, or from the side. So the two of them go and sit in a booth, which was because Earl's set up on the floor, right? You know, in the lounge there, right, Jim? So here I am sitting there, I'm looking at Jim, Charlie Watts, and Earl. And Charlie's, both of them transfixed on Earl from the side. And another one of these very memorable things. I got to share that with Charlie back in 2019. And he's like, oh, you were there. I was like, yeah, amazing. Anyway,
Yeah.
since Earl came into the mix a little bit, and both of them were, Hal and Earl were so influential, unbeknownst to me, and probably to Dennis originally. I know Dennis is pretty much a scholar of this stuff, as he was mentioning about Hal's records that I had no idea about. But, you know, the two of them were so influential on me, unbeknownst to me, because really at the time they didn't get the credit, as you guys were saying, as the Wrecking Crew film came out, and you know, as time goes on and people learn about the roots of rock and roll, really, which begins with you know, the Wrecking Crew, along with, you know, especially the 60s, roots of the 60s rock and roll. And of course, all the work that Hal did and Don did on Pet Sounds and all these things, so influential on me. So it was great to see a little bits and pieces of that firsthand, seeing Hal play a couple of times at NAMM, seeing Earl play at Chadney's quite a bit. It's just such an education. Just wanted to throw that in there about the two of them.
Yeah.
You know, there was a time where there was so many wonderful drummers, and there was enough work for everybody, including Hal and Earl and Jimmy Gordon and Ed Green. Who am I leaving out? There was a couple more.
Jimmy Keltner.
There was so much work going on at that point.
Frank
That
DeVito.
there was enough for everybody, you know.
Yeah.
And they all were terrific drummers.
Yeah, one of the things we haven't talked about is the comedy of Hal Blaine.
Oh,
There was, my God, there was, for those who never met Hal Blaine, you could be anywhere and he will find a joke out of nowhere. It was ridiculous. I mean, it could have been a parking meter and he'll tell a joke about a parking meter.
Yeah.
And it was constant. And
I
being on
think
the
he was
road
a
with him over those
frustrated stand-up comedian.
extremely frustrated.
Yeah.
And there was nothing better. I mean, sometimes you got like, okay, it's like being on the road where you guys deal with it all the time. You hear the same set with the same comedian. So we would hear the same stuff. You know, what's the hardest thing for a studio musician? You know, finding a parking.
Yes.
And it went on and on and on. So
What's the hardest thing for studio musician? What was it?
Finding
a
parking.
space.
Oh, fine.
So then there was
Who told that story when we were as I mentioned, Don and I were up in Palm Springs to present posthumously the Star, and Denny was there to Hal up in Palm Springs there. Who told the story about Hal after the Tammy show? You recall that? You know, the famous Tammy show.
That's where he took the Stones back to his house.
Yeah, so the punchline of that story, right, was he had Charlie and a couple others, Rolling Stones. Oh, you want to see my house, Hollywood Hills house or whatever? Yeah. And they pulling up to the driveway and he presses down on the accelerator and he's heading right for the garage, like he's going to crash into the garage. But they had never seen, you know, being underprivileged in England in the 60s, never saw an automatic garage door opener. So just about to hit the garage door opener. God, I forget who told that story, but that's like so funny.
I remember that.
Yeah.
So
that's as far as his sense of humor.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I just remember the first time being in that deli, and this is where, you know, there's nothing where, I mean, he'd sit there and he'd go like this. He goes, Jesus, this food killed more Jews than Hitler. Like, oh, right?
Yeah, he used that one a lot.
But then this is my favorite though. So Michael Kravitz Hal has to do is being honored at a Sinatra thing in the desert. He doesn't, this is at the end. He barely remembers that he has to do this thing. I remember Michael making sure that he ran out, got him a pair of pants because you remember it was always shorts.
Always short.
Yeah. So he gets, now the host of this dinner is basically a deli that's hosting this. And of course he starts with that joke. This food killed more people than Hitler. And there's no laugh at this event. It just died. And then it was just couldn't get him off the stage at that point. It was like
I remember at the 70th at the Baked Potato where Don put me on the spot. I had to go and get up and play Be My Baby in front of Hal, which was an honor, but also pretty scary. But I remember Hal was doing a bit of his stand-up, and it was a particularly nasty night, similar to the rain we've been having now. And I remember Hal got up there and said, "Oh, it's raining buckets out there," and I almost kicked one. Something. You know,
Oh, he always had a line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he probably used all of those jokes all the time, but they're effective.
Hey, I was just going to quickly make a comment just to jump back 1 second to what Jim Keltner was saying about Hal's technique and the backbeat. And I was just going to echo what Jim said, basically, in that he played, I know this because when I worked for Zildjian, we made his drumsticks for him, the Hal Blaine stick. And it was like a 7A, as Jim said, a really small, if you know what a 7A is, really thin stick. And Jim, you know, and Jim, I think you play this way, or I've seen you do this, where he played with the butt end as the backbeat. So he was able to get that, you know, enough sort of fat sound out of the butt end of a skinny stick. If he used the regular tip, he might have broken it, but he just had it. He had it so dialed in. I remember him telling me, well, you know, I play it this way, so I don't need a big stick. He'd say, this is all I need. Did
he do that on his left hand on the snare drum? Yeah.
And always turned around.
Yeah.
He was always playing with the butt end. But he I watched him enough times to see that he would play according to the music. You know, you got to let the music tell you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he would play he'd play the fat backbeat, you know, rim shot.
Yeah.
And then he'd play in the middle of the drum just at the right time. He'd go back and forth. And you know, you can't, if you say this and then you go and try to do it, it's going to be stupid. You can't do that. You know, you have to do it. You have to let the music
instinctively.
Yeah. And he did that so beautifully. I used to for years I played like that. I always used small sticks. I used a stick called a 3D, a Gretsch 3D, with a little round bead. It very similar to what Jeff Porcaro started using years later. Only it was longer. But the one that, but I always did what Hal did. I always turned it around backwards and played the backbeat like that.
I thought so, yeah.
But then leaving the traditional grip behind was something that I regretted. I regretted it for a long time, and then I got used to playing match grip, and so that's all I do now is match grip. And I saw Steve Gadd a few weeks ago here in LA playing with his band, and you know, he's a famous traditional grip guy, right? I mean, he probably played it as pretty as anybody ever, and he would switch over to match grip, and he still had the same feel, the same beautiful dexterity and everything. You know, it was so it's kind of an inevitable thing for us to do. You know, you should be able to play both.
Yeah.
But that's that was,
you know, something else interesting about Hal, and you will attest this. Every drummer will. He wasn't afraid to try new stuff. I remember when the Syndrums came out. You remember the electronic? Hal was the first one to have that. He had the Rototoms. He was the first one to have those.
Yeah.
And you know, introducing it and it being like the leader he was, and everybody followed along to see, wow, this is the latest thing Hal Blaine is doing. And he did that over and over again, his approach and stuff. But the thing that Clem was saying about having to play Be My Baby, that dotted quarter, eighth note, and quarter note has been copied and 10 million records forever. And that was the line he made up. Nothing was written like that. He decided that's the way that's going to be. And that's been over and over. That one lick has been in God knows how many songs.
That's right. And
the
sound of his floor tom.
Here's those rototoms.
Yeah.
But he did that beat, Don, before he got those drums, right?
Oh, that's right. Absolutely.
I mean, he did that. The beat you're talking about, he did that in those Ludwig blues.
Yes.
That were just, and I don't ever remember him having two toms up on the bass drum. It was always a classic four-piece.
No.
And but that floor tom sound that he got was the key to that beat.
Right,
Sure.
the snare and the floor tom simultaneously.
Simultaneously, snare and floor.
But
you got it, Clem.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to show just one more quick photo. This is a photo Denny sent me, the 7 records of the year photo, which is just talking about Hal's incredible. I mean, God, it's just when you read the book and you realize his legacy, his how prolific his recording career was. It's just
some Mamas and Papas stuff on there, I guess, with Adler there, right? Mamas and Papas probably on there.
Well, I think the records that started, I think, in '65 with Taste of Honey. And I think '66 maybe Strangers in the Night, maybe. 67 Up and Away. 68 maybe Mrs. Robinson.
Yeah, I can read Herb Alpert, Tijuana Brass 66, Strangers in the Night 67, Fifth Dimension 68.
Oh, okay. Up and Away, was it?
Yeah, and then Simon and Garfunkel 69. Unless I'm getting the years wrong, I'm just trying to read this thing. I see another Simon and Garfunkel maybe in 71. 70 is, I can't read it. Sorry.
Probably Bridge Over Troubled Water.
Yeah, that's
probably. Yeah, 71 maybe. Yeah, it was. I can see that. Yep. Love Will Keep Us Together, I think, was the year after that. Captain and Tennille. Right. They're all in the book. Yeah, they're all in the book. It's
but what's more remarkable than anything is that the first 6 of them are consecutive. They're starting in the first, the year after year after year, he had the top record. It's not like he skipped a year.
You know what's also interesting about that is that it could have been any one of those records because he played on so many of them. If it wasn't that record, it would have been another record he played on. That would have been record of the year because that's how many gigs we were doing, one after another. It'll never. I remember one week he had 3 sets of drums. I forget the name of the guy that did his valet for him. He had that guy was
Rick Fauché.
Yeah, Rick Fauché. Yeah,
Rick Fauché.
Yep.
He'd have one set in one studio, another set ready, and so that he could leave one date and get to the next date, and the drums would be set up, and then leave that date and then go to another date, and the drums would be set up there. Right. I think he had 3 sets of drums for quite a long time, just to be able to make all those dates. And it's a time that I wish everybody could have, that we had from 1962, I'd say to 1972. There was so much recording going on in Los Angeles in that period of time. But at the same instance, those guys were making hit records. So if you were a producer that worked for Capitol or Warner Brothers, we better get those guys, because we became those bunch of guys that could come up with hit records. And it happened over and over. And I remember Joe Porcaro, when he first came out from Buffalo, or from back east, I think it was Buffalo.
Hartford, actually, yeah.
And he brought Jeffy into a date to watch Hal Blaine.
Right.
And Jeffy's sitting there watching Hal Blaine play drums. And I'm just looking over there, and I said, this is the picture we need. That picture of Joe Porcaro, Jeff, and Hal Blaine together. It was absolutely, and Jeff's eyes were just wide open, catching every little thing he did. It was amazing. And it was at Gold Star. That was where we were doing those days. Pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
I have a question for Don, if I may, and for Denny. Maybe he heard his father speak about this, and to Jim too. When you guys were making all these records back in the day, did you have a sense that there would be such lasting power to the music, or did you think it was just a fad, some of the rock and roll things that were going on at the time?
Well, I never would have thought it would have been going on this long.
Really?
That's for sure. But we didn't really know we were making hit records. We were supporting our families. You know, we were this is how we lived. That was our lives. We were in day and night, and for me, I had to play live. Even though I was doing all that recording, I still had to play live in a nightclub. I just had to do that to let it out, you know, because it is a little bit confining when you have to stick to the one thing you're doing. But for that whole time, it was an amazing time. I don't think it will ever be repeated, mainly because of the way everything is recorded.
Yeah,
but you know, to have a drummer with 3 sets of drums and 3 different studios and all being active in one day, you know, that's pretty damn amazing.
That's incredible.
The other thing with those guys, and there's a big difference, and it's funny because the immediate family, the other film I just did, and Jim could attest to this, when the changeover from it's a 3-hour session, 3-hour session, 3-hour session, they're bouncing around, and they don't even remember what they did.
Right.
You know, so they give that piece of music. I remember for my father, when Jimmy Webb gave him a charm as a gift for winning Up and Away Grammy, gave him a little Grammy charm. He goes, "What's this for?" He goes, "It's for when we did the Fifth Dimension Up and Away last year." He didn't even know he was on it. And that's because they didn't spend enough time in the studio there's never been, they weren't always, the singers weren't always there.
Right.
So they don't remember the music they were playing, I think, for my father. And I think there's a lot of stuff that's lost in that era. Whereas the 70s, you guys, all of you, started working longer and spent time on those songs with the artist, or if you were the artist. You know, I think there was a different mentality of making music because it just changed, technology changed. Right. So I think for my father, a lot of it was, don't forget, he's coming out of World War II as a kid, and it's only you know, he's lucky to play guitar and get paid. He didn't expect to be he wasn't meant to be a guitar player. That wasn't a profession that he thought he could even have. So I think he didn't care what he played, as dumb or stupid or amazing as it was. He didn't care. He was just happy to make a living at something he loved doing. Yeah. So it wasn't something he strived for until much later.
Yeah. Well, there was that anonymity amongst the session musicians. Like I was saying, as a kid, we really didn't know who was playing on those records. We just knew they were great, you know, and influencing us, but the name check was not there. You know, is that there's anonymity they had at the time, I suppose.
What was the Charlie quote? When I came to the U.S. for the first time, I wanted to meet my 5 favorite drummers and my 5 favorite bands. I found out they were all Hal Blaine.
Right.
Yeah. And to Denny, I mean, would you say that the fact what Clem just said about the fact that they were anonymous, you know, guys like Hal and your dad and Don didn't get credited, did that even bother them, or were they just so busy? Yeah, right. They just probably
because I think it was part of the gig. I mean, Don could answer for himself, but for my father, I think it was just part of again, it wasn't like, oh my God, they're famous. Now they aren't given any credit. Do you know what I mean? Don't forget, they're coming out of singles. They're all doing singles in the 60s. Yeah. You know, the single, and then it becomes an album. Now the albums come out, they're still not putting the names on. Maybe Lou Adler did with Jan and Dean, and he did it with the Mamas and Papas, but it didn't bother them that much, I think, until later when they realized how having an album credit could mean a difference.
Mhm.
And seeing that with these guys in the 70s, it made a big difference for their careers. Not that the guys in the Wrecking Crew needed a jump in their careers, but I think it was later that they would have appreciated it more. Don't you
Yeah.
think, Don?
The first ones that started doing it was Phil Spector and Brian Wilson. They
Right.
they forced the majors,
No,
you know.
no. I disagree. Brian Wilson did not.
No,
Don't
Phil
forget,
didn't, right? No.
That
Phil
sound
did
didn't
it.
have any credit to you guys. That was the whole point. The
Oh,
Beach
yes,
Boys
yeah.
never gave you. I
That
hate to
happened
slam
later on
that
with-
down, Randy.
But Phil's had our names on those albums. He
Yeah.
was the first one. I remember way back when, and it took Brian a long time, you know. It's like in the Wrecking Crew film itself. When you see that one section, you realize that most of those bands couldn't play. I mean, when we went in with Dino, Desi, and Billy, they got 3 major hits, and it was Hal Blaine and a bunch of the Wrecking Crew guys, including myself. Those kids were tiny. They were 8 years old. They were 5 years old.
No, they weren't that young.
But it was
No,
Hal
but
Blaine
it
that played
was
the
all-
drums on it.
Well,
It
it's
was
like, obviously, like
business.
Jim was saying, the difference between making a record and just going in, doing a show, it's
Yeah.
a vast difference,
Yeah.
especially
Oh, yeah.
back then, you know. So, I mean, that's why even Ringo, right, when they did Love Me Do, similar to what Jim was saying, Hal was in the background in case the drummer, in that case, Jim couldn't cut
Yeah.
it. It's a similar
Yeah.
scenario with Ringo, I believe, back in the early days with George Martin as well, with trying to remember the other drummer that played.
Andy
on-
White.
Who's the drummer
Andy
that
White.
played?
Andy White, yeah.
Right, that played
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
original Love Me Do and all. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys
But now-
think
yeah.
part of the magic in those days too, that we talk about Hal, was that everybody was in the same room at the same time.
Right,
That's
right,
right.
exactly. Yeah, feeding off one another, right? Making it.
Yeah. Whole different
Yeah.
situation. Yeah. Whole band,
That-
orchestra. Yeah.
That's very important because it's something that kind of went by the wayside for quite a time, and now I think it's coming back where people are going back.
Well, now
getting
there's
it
all
from-
different ways to do it now,
You
right?
know.
There's so many different ways.
Yeah.
I was at Berkeley School of Music about 2 months ago in
Uh-huh.
Boston,
Right.
and they asked me to do a Phil Spector date, and they set the drums up, and unfortunately we did it, and it was absolutely incredible. They had 4 girl singers from the school, the drummer, and then I said, I put up one finger, and they said, "What is that?" I said, "It's called mono." And they all looked at me. I said, the same thing in this one room was recorded on one piece of tape. And how did they get Hal's drums on it? They got Hal's drums. How did they get them? It was all done in mono, and that's the way it was. And here they are with Pro Tools, where it doesn't matter. It's
Yeah.
infinity. you know?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. 48 tracks.
The
Yeah.
digital world.
But
But you're right. It's good to go in and record live as well. Which,
It is live.
Yeah.
Which, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know I've kept you guys on a long time, and I so appreciate this. I did want to mention to Jim Keltner, because you weren't here when I said it, but Max Weinberg would have been here today. I spoke with Max over the weekend. Today is Bruce Springsteen's mom's funeral. So Max sends his regards to everybody, and his regrets that he couldn't be here today. But and Danny Serafin was going to join us, but had realized he had another appointment. So, but I thought maybe you guys might appreciate if we close it off today with a little number.
The night we met, I knew I needed you so. And if I had the chance, I'd never let you go. So won't you say you love me? I'll make you so proud of me. We'll make them turn their head every place we go. So won't you please be my real baby?
It's Joe's hearing it.
Say you'll be my darling, be my baby now. I'll make you happy, baby.
Who's on the castanets there now?
Just wait and
Denny Tedesco.
You give me, I'll give
Who's that?
He was coming to play for
Right
us.
now. Right now.
since the day I saw you. I have been waiting for you. You know I will adore you till eternity. So won't you be my little baby? Say you'll be my darling. Be my baby now. Whoa, be my little baby. Say you'll be my darling. Be my baby now.
Those fills at the end where Hal goes for it, man. I always love that part of that song where he's just. I'm picturing Phil Spector like, you know, conducting and telling Hal, go for it, go for it. You know.
Well,
And that was
I'll tell
another
you,
signature thing, the 3 against the 4 that, you know,
Yeah.
was kind of classic. Yeah.
also, Phil wouldn't let Hal play fills till he was getting ready to make the final takes.
Yeah.
Right.
He did spare him that. And then,
Yeah.
then when you knew Hal was starting to get crazy, we were getting close to the end.
Wow.
Because we were there, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours sometimes. And we were waiting for, okay, when is Hal going to start playing fills?
That's, you know, I remember reading in Hal's book, Jim, you wrote the foreword to Hal's book, and I could quote this from that where you said he played with such confidence. And in that song, to me, that's a great example of just his playing sounds so confident. It's so, the beat is so definite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, the beat is so right there. There's no ambiguity over where the beat's going to be. It's just like, boom.
No,
And
you know,
yeah.
he played like that naturally. That was some natural thing from him. He didn't come from any kind of rock and roll world, or he came from kind of wasn't it, Don, wasn't it sort of not jazz but kind of
Well,
didn't he, who would he play? He played with some singers.
From the sand.
he
Yeah.
played with a lot of pop singers, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I think it was just natural for him.
Right.
And he just knew how to come up with it. You know, it was just
So
there.
yeah, so the thing
Yeah.
is that you know, you've always we've always read that, you know, musicians play who they are. The guitar player, piano, drums, who you are, and
Yeah.
the whole thing of all the experience that you've amassed, that's what you play. And with Hal, that's obviously what we're hearing. And when I hear Hal playing like that, it reminds me of Jimmy Gordon, because Jimmy
Yeah,
picked that up
Mhm.
he did.
and went his whole career with that. He knew Hal before, you know, when he was still a teenager. I think it was when
Sure.
met Hal, and then ended up playing like with the Wrecking Crew, you know, percussion and things like that. So he had Hal Blaine all in his DNA.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was the other reason why when I met Jim Gordon, I you know, I became like a disciple of his, because he was another version of Hal Blaine, with that same confidence, that same wonderful kind of thing that I always wanted, and never. I knew instinctively that I would never have that somehow, because I didn't lean toward it. I didn't, you know, I still was with Elvin and those guys, you know, and
Yeah,
yet
but
I was
you
interested in the
you
world.
found it. What good? Believe
Yeah.
me.
Well, well, I did, you know, but I never got that feeling, that confident thing that those guys had. Jimmy and Hal personified that. If you listen to
Yeah.
all that, that's what I used to tell Jeff Porcaro, man. Jeff
Yeah.
used to try to be silly and play crazy stuff, and he loved when I would play something stupid, and he would try to copy it. And I told him over and over, listen to Jimmy Gordon. You've already got Hal in there. Listen to Jimmy now, and you're going to have an incredible recording career. I had to tell him that, and fortunately, he listened.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that, yeah, man. We could play.
One more thing. Let me just say one more thing.
Absolutely,
And
Jim.
Don will. I want to say this because Don is on this thing. Spector, you know, ended badly, right? His whole life ended so badly, but he was fucking amazing. I loved playing with Phil Spector. Everything I ever did that had Phil Spector as the producer was, for me, it was amazing. I mean, wouldn't you say that Spector was?
We did 21 million selling records in a row at one point.
I mean,
that's why we got hired. You know,
that speaks
who are you
for
going to
itself.
hire? You know,
Right.
He had a knack. Also, let's not forget Jack Nitzsche as an arranger.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. As an arranger,
and most arrangers would rely on Hal, so they didn't have to write out a drum part. They didn't know how to write a drum part. Most of the guys, they would leave the bar lines and rely on Hal's ability to come up with it. You know, or Jimmy Gordon or yourself. I've watched Clem come up with stuff. You know, you come up with stuff because the arranger gives you the space to do that. You know,
right?
Yeah, it was an important part of that, and especially when you're coming up with it over and over again as a necessity, it's important. It's so important.
Right. Exactly. Well,
man, thank you guys.
This is great to see you guys. My goodness.
Yeah, it's good to see everyone.
Yes.
Nice T-shirt, John. Nice T-shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got.
I heard of that place, the Baked Potatoes.
Yes.
I've been there a couple of times. Yeah.
Yes, we all have. We have to pay homage to the men. Yes, Dennis.
Hey, John. Before we close, real quick, does anybody remember Hal's other life as an inventor?
Yes.
Yeah, and I have right here a thing he gave me in 1988. It's called the Hal Blaine EZ, and it was his bid for people who fly or dive. You breathe. Did you have this, Don?
I have it.
What is it for?
It's supposed to be when you're flying and you're descending, and to keep your ears from blocking up. You breathe into this thing through your nostril and inflate this balloon.
Does it work?
It's a balloon.
I never tried it.
You know what it is? There's a balloon attached to that, and when you put it in your nose, it blows the balloon and it takes the pressure off your ears.
Yeah,
but it never went. You never produced with it.
He appeared on a TV show called "Why Didn't I Think of That?" about inventors. I remember seeing him trying to promote this.
Wow. See, Dennis, you're a man of just all that trivia knowledge. It's awesome.
He's a scholar. He's a scholar.
He is. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you all so much for being here. Once again, Denny Tedesco, the man behind the Wrecking Crew and the Immediate Family. Clem Burke,
great
drummer extraordinaire with so many bands. Don Lombardi, my dear friend and former boss.
Don.
Yeah. Don Randi, Dennis Diken.
Thank you.
The Jedi Master himself, Jim Keltner. Jim, I said this before you got here today. I always have more spring in my step when I know I'm going to see you. So
that's lovely.
Bless your heart, man.
Thank you.
It's an honor to be here. Honored to be here.
Thank you, guys. Guys, hang tight for a second. I'll end the stream and we'll say goodbye. But thanks for being here, all you guys. I love you all. Thanks for watching, everybody. And God bless Hal Blaine.
Hal Blaine strikes again.
Absolutely. There you go.
Strikes again.
See you guys.
All right, well, that's my show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like, leave me a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done that already. And the podcast is available on all the podcast platforms, so download it And remember, no drummers are ever harmed on Live from My Drum Room or Track Talk. And drummers, when in doubt, leave it out. All right. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you again real soon. See ya.